Number 10. The perfect disguise. When breaking the law, it's best to wear a disguise so that law enforcement and other witnesses won't recognize you, and it's easier to get away with the crime. On July 31st, 2009 in South Carolina, that's exactly what 24-year-old Thomas James and 23-year-old Michael Gregory Thomas decided to do. Sheriff Leon Lott said the two suspects entered a Sprint PCS store armed with guns and demanded money from the employees. Holding the staff at gunpoint, the criminals stole wallets, purses, and credit cards before forcing the workers into a bathroom while they fled. The men had what they thought was a clever disguise by spray painting their faces gold in order to conceal their identities during the robbery. Investigators learned that after the robbery, James started having difficulty breathing and died shortly after. The coroner ran a toxicity test on James and discovered that he had inhaled a little too much of the gold spray paint fumes and consequently died because of it. Witnesses identified Michael Thomas as one of the robbers, and he was arrested a few weeks after the crime. So in case you were wondering, spray painting your face doesn't really conceal your character, and it just might kill you. Number 9. Getting busy. In September 2019, a couple decided to get busy on a third-floor balcony at a graduation house party in Quito, Ecuador. And apparently they were too busy to realize just how high up they were. The naked couple tumbled over the edge while romping and plunging to their deaths. The bodies of the unnamed 28-year-old woman and her 35-year-old lover were discovered sprawled on the adjacent terrace by a neighbor who heard a crash and rushed outside to see what the unusual commotion was. A heartbroken relative of the unfortunate female victim that fell said she was the mother of an 8-year-old girl. Police District Operations Chief Christian Trujillo said that the detectives are investigating how the accident happened. But reports from local media suggest that the passionate couple were simply unaware of the height of the balcony wall and its secureness and toppled over it while having sex. Number 8. Buried alive. In 2021, a pastor in Africa died after he, in an effort to prove he was truly a messenger from God, buried himself for 3 days while pledging he would rise again. 22-year-old James Sakara, a pastor from the Zion Church in Chadiza, Zamibia, wanted to demonstrate to his congregation that he had been anointed by the Lord and could perform the miraculous. James insisted on being buried alive in an underground tomb for 3 days. Though his followers were skeptical, he managed to convince a couple members with his scheme. He had them bind his hands and bury him 3 feet or just about a meter under the dirt. Obvious to most, the pastor's theological knowledge was significantly lacking. Before he attempted his resurrection, he even quoted Jesus' instructions at the Last Supper, quote, "Do this in remembrance of me," and insisted it referred to being buried and resurrected, not about taking communion. 3 days later, congregation members dug him up and found a dead corpse. They attempted a series of rituals to, quote, complete the resurrection, but their results were in vain. Number 7. Titanic pose. In May 2022, a man tragically drowned as he was attempting to copy the iconic, quote, King of the World Titanic pose with his girlfriend. Two 23-year-olds, Furkan Sifsi and Mini Dinar, tumbled over into the sea in Izmit, Turkey after trying to create the pose Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet did in the famous Titanic scene. You know the one. Winslet stands at the bow of the ship with her arms out like a bird, and Leo comes in behind her and holds her at the waist. The couple, who had been drinking alcohol on a fishing trip, chose the edge of the pier for the perfect picture. Furkan and Minnie reportedly crossed a security chain to do the pose on the edge, but their imitation went horribly wrong when tragedy struck and both of them fell into the sea. Local fishermen witnessed their tumble and rushed to the couple's aid, with one of them able to rescue Minnie after she grabbed onto the end of a fishing rod. She was pulled to safety, but her boyfriend wasn't so lucky. He disappeared under the waves. Emergency services were called to the scene to search for the young man, and a diving team found his lifeless body 2 hours after the ordeal. Would you rather fall off a cruise ship into the ocean and be stranded for 6 hours, or spend the night stuck in a room with a vicious and rabid cat? Tell us which would be worse in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Methadone underwear. In August 2014, an inmate at a Kentucky jail died after eating methadone-soaked underwear that was smuggled into the prison by a cellmate. 55-year-old Michael Jones was let out on a release day from Jessamine County Jail to attend a funeral, but he had had some friends inside and decided to bring the inmates a little treat. Allegedly, he brought back drug-laced underpants, which went undetected by prison guards as he was wearing them. Jones cut up the briefs and shared them with his cellmates, including 33-year-old Corey McQuarrie. McQuarrie started to feel sick and complained to the guards, but declined to tell them what he had eaten. The next morning, he was found lying unresponsive in his cell. He was taken to the hospital, but was pronounced dead later that day. During an investigation into his death, jail officials learned that he had consumed pieces of underwear that had been doused with liquid methadone. Police suspect he died of a drug overdose. Number 5. Shopping cart crash. In 2008, a Florida teenager named Cameron Bieberly participated in something called a car surfing. Car surfing typically involves standing on the back of a moving vehicle or being pulled by a car. Cameron thought it would be a fun idea to take a joyride in a shopping cart that was attached to the back of his friend's car. The 18-year-old's fun was cut short, though, when the car hit a speed bump at 42 miles an hour, or just about 68 kilometers an hour, hurling him 27 feet or just about 8 meters throughout the air. Cameron landed headfirst onto the concrete and died almost instantly. His friend who was driving the car, 26-year-old Adam Smith, was charged with vehicular homicide and received a 4-year prison sentence. Cameron's entirely avoidable death left his family heartbroken. The teen's father said that the tragedy had destroyed their lives. The family blamed the popular show Jackass for inspiring his son to try the stunt. But many will argue that, at the end of the day, Cameron was an adult who knowingly made a dangerous decision. Number 4. Hurricane Party. On August 17, 1969, Hurricane Camille roared towards the Mississippi coast with sustained winds of an incredible 190 miles per hour, or just over 300 kilometers per hour. It swept over Bay St. Louis, Mississippi as a Category 5 storm. Residents all along the coast fled the wrath of the mighty Hurricane Camille, but one group chose to ride the storm out rather than evacuate. 24 residents of the infamous Richelieu Manor apartments in Pass Christian chose not to flee and instead held a hurricane party. Common sense isn't that common. The apartment where the party was held was located in the direct path of the hurricane's eye wall. The storm completely destroyed the building, leaving nothing but a concrete slab. 23 of the 24 party attendees were killed. Camille is one of the strongest named hurricanes to ever hit the United States. More than 250 people died, and the cost of damages was over $1.4 billion. Number 3. Eating slugs. In November 2018 in Sydney, Australia, 19-year-old Sam Ballard was drinking with his friends when they dared him to eat a slug that was crawling across his patio. It was just a silly dare. What's the worst that can happen? Sam reached for the slimy creature and gulped it down. How would he know that the slug carried a potentially deadly worm? Well, it did, and it put him into a coma that lasted more than a year, paralyzing his body and ultimately taking his life. After downing the slug, Sam became weak and started to complain of severe pain in his legs. Katie Ballard, Sam's mother, told news outlets that at first they had worried he might have multiple sclerosis, which had afflicted her husband, but doctors said that wasn't the case. Sam then told his mother and medical professionals he had eaten a slug, and that's when doctors were able to confirm rat lungworm disease from the infected little invertebrate. Rat lungworm disease is caused by a parasitic worm, and as the name suggests, the parasite lodges in the lungs of rats and is later excreted in its feces. So the slug Sam swallowed had eaten rat dung, or the parasite, and became infected, which infected Sam, and instead of passing through his digestive tract, the worm crawled into his brain. This caused Sam to fall into a coma for 420 days. When he woke up, he was paralyzed and unable to move without intense effort or eat without a tube. It wasn't long after he woke up that he died. Number 2. Too much caffeine. In January of 2022, Tom Mansfield from the UK made a grave mistake measuring his caffeine powder. He died of a caffeine overdose when he mixed himself a drink that accidentally contained the caffeine equivalent to hundreds of cups of coffee. The 29-year-old worked as a personal trainer, and one day he ordered himself a 100-gram bag of a new caffeine powder. Tom often used caffeine powder to supplement his drinks, but when he measured the powder on a scale, he didn't get his math right. The recommended dose was roughly 600 milligrams, but he accidentally used several grams instead. This resulted in him mixing a drink with the power of 200 cups of coffee jammed into one. Immediately after he drank his toxic coffee mix, he clutched his chest in pain and started foaming at the mouth. His wife was shocked and terrified, but managed to call an ambulance. Tom went immediately into cardiac arrest and died before doctors could do anything to save him. Reaching a conclusion of misadventure, the coroner said that the cause of death was caffeine toxicity. Number 1. Smith Machine. In May 2022, a 23-year-old paramedic named Dolores Dolo Boshert was tragically killed when gym equipment fell on her as she was exercising at a Club Fitness 25 miles or just about 40 kilometers northwest of St. Louis. Police said the freak accident happened around 2:50 a.m. No one else was in the gym at the time. It wasn't until 20 minutes after the incident that another gym goer showed up and discovered Dolo dead underneath the equipment. They immediately attempted to render aid and called 911. Police said Dolo was squatting on a Smith machine when they believed she lost her balance and her legs suddenly gave out, and she was pinned under the heavy barbell. The Smith machine is a weight machine that consists of a barbell that is fixed within steel rails, allowing only vertical movement. It's most commonly used to perform squats. There were no signs of foul play, and investigators labeled it as, quote, an unfortunate accident. Thanks for watching. Which one of these totally avoidable deaths is the worst way to go in your opinion? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like these. See you next time on The Bad Badger.